Is Terry in this meeting? No, I didn't think she was in the meeting.
Honorable Mr. Mayor, ready for countdown?
Okay.
10, 9, 8, 7.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to the Brisbane City Council meeting. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So no one has requested to be online, so Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Davis.
Here.
Councilmember Kern.
Here.
Councilmember Mackin.
Here.
Mayor Lentz.
Here.
And Councilmember O'Connell is absent.
All righty. So, Tom, would you please report out closed session, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The council met in closed session to consider under D a claim. The council voted to deny the claim. Under E, there were two anticipated litigation matters that were discussed in both cases. One involved another public entity, and direction was given to the staff. The other involved a pending matter that's already has been in litigation, and direction was given to the staff. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, great. Thank you, Tom. All right, moving on to adoption of tonight's agenda. I'll entertain a first and a second.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Oral communications number one. If there's someone in the audience who wants to speak on an item that's not on tonight's agenda, by all means, raise your hand. Okay. Anyone online? Nope. All right, so then we'll move on to the consent calendar. Unless there's an item that a council member wants to pull, I'll accept it first and entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve items B through E.
Okay, so,
Second?
all right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great. Okay, let's move on to new business. Item F, study session, 70 Old County Road Planning Program. So do we start with the staff report? Okay, John?
Yes, thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. Council will remember a couple of years ago, you hired Good City to undertake the planning program for 70 Old County with a heavy emphasis on community engagement. So Good City is here this evening to provide an overview of the work done to date and talk about steps going forward. So with that, turn it over to Kevin Gardner of Good City.
All right, you guys.
Thank you, John. Good evening, Mayor Lentz and members of the council. My name is Kevin Gardner. I'm with Good City Company. Also with me this evening is Aaron Acknan, who is one of the principals at Good City Company. And we really appreciate the opportunity to work on this project, get to know the community, and study this property at 70 Old County Road. So if we could start the slides, please. So this presentation goes through the 70 Old County Road Planning Program. Next, please. For background, the city acquired the property at 70 Old County Road in 2022. It formerly housed a Bank of America. It was a strategic purchase to control and plan for the redevelopment of the site, and it's important that it's a key entrance to Brisbane. It's a little over 1 acre, 1.27 acres, currently zoned neighborhood commercial Brisbane Village. Next, please. A little bit about the background. The purchase price was a little over $4 million, 4.2. There are some carrying costs, so we wanted to show those just so it's clear. There's some financing and operational costs for each year. And then there is also the one-time planning costs for this current effort. Next, please. This is a project timeline, and we will, in this presentation, go through the project timeline really step by step to show what kind of engagement we've had with the community. And that brings up the issues that then come into the feasibility study. So it's kind of leads up in a progression that way. So next slide, please. We started in March with a community open house, and as you can see there on the flyer, it was open house ideas wanted. It was really open to any ideas that people came forward with. We provided some background information on some of the uses that had been articulated by the community previously, but also we had plenty of opportunities for people to put Post-its essentially on boards and say what they would like to see. We also allowed them to say what they didn't want to see. So it was really meant to be very open, not directed to any particular outcome. And next, please. From there, we derived 6 different, what we call community visions. And these came all from suggestions that were made in that open house. I won't go through into great detail unless there are questions, but in summary, the community visions included a small commercial center, which would have a few stores, kind of like a miniature shopping center. There was an option for standalone housing, and when we say that, we mean it's simply housing. It could be either market rate or affordable housing built on the property. There was interest in a community use, such as a community center. There was interest in destination commercial, and the distinction between destination commercial and small commercial, destination commercial usually has what's known as an anchor, so there's some kind of big brand or something that would draw people from further away and come to Brisbane for that particular tenant. Mixed-use retail with housing would have housing presumably either on upper floors of a building and then commercial or some kind of use on the ground floor. There could also be an option where they're next door to each other, so you could have a little commercial component with housing built next door but not above. And then last but not least, there was some interest in a teen center. So we had a couple of examples of that as well. Next, please. So with those 6 options, we returned to community engagement. We had a pop-up in the park at one of the farmers markets on May 15th. And here the intention was to receive input on those 6 different visions and also to promote a survey that was going to be coming out concurrently where people could look a little more closely at these 6 options and provide feedback in survey form. Next, please. One more slide, please. There we go. So there was a community survey, and it had a lot of the same elements as our pop-up. It had the 6 different options presented to the public. People were asked to respond to which were their favorites, essentially rank their top 3 choices based on people's, well, first let me back up. There were 233 respondents, which is really good for a survey of this type. So we were happy with that response. And we asked if we ranked just the first choice votes. The top of the list was the mixed use retail with housing. Some people also mentioned they would didn't have to necessarily be mixed use. It could be, it couldn't be retail and housing. It could also be a community use with housing. Second, and almost as many votes, was the small commercial center. And then following that was community center. So these became our top 3 moving forward into the next into our next stage. Next, please. So our next stage were the stakeholder interviews, and that page there is obviously too small to see on the screen, but this is taken out of the feasibility study. So there's a summary of these stakeholder interviews. There were 6 different interviews conducted. 3 were market rate developers experienced in both commercial as well as residential projects, and then 3 were affordable housing developers. All of the developers were familiar with San Mateo County and Brisbane specifically, and they were all considered experts in their field, so they provide us a lot of useful input going forward. Next, please. And from there, we also did further community engagement. We did a second pop-up with the concert in the park, and that was in July. And at that point, the survey had been concluded. We had our top 3, so we presented that to the community and essentially said, here are the top 3. What do you think of those? And provide us more information, more detail. The idea was that we're really trying to narrow down to a preferred alternative. So going from 6 to 3, and then using this kind of input to further narrow down the field. Next, please. And this is also where we started showing concept plans. And what we did with particularly the top 2 options was to show more than one example. Previously, for each of our 6 visions, we had shown one site plan and one kind of axonometric or bird's eye view. Here we wanted to say there's a couple of different ways of doing any of these projects. So with the mixed use retail with housing, we showed 2 different options, one with the vertical mixed use, as we call it, with the housing above the storefronts, and then another one where the storefronts were a separate building, housing was built behind it. But those are both considered valid, and we were curious what people's feedback would be on those. With the small commercial centers, similarly, we had the same one that we had shown before, which had a strip of storefronts facing Old County Road with parking behind. But then we had another variation which was meant to maybe get a little more closer to that destination commercial option, where there would be one larger space that maybe had some kind of architectural distinction or character. This was something we had also been hearing through the community outreach, as people were seeing this as a key site, it's a gateway, and trying to think what would be a interesting architectural approach that would really set this development apart. Next, please. And with that, we did an open house on the site, and that was fun and exciting. We did it in the parking lot, and that was on September 6th. So we had a whole series of boards, lots of A-frames, and in fact, we even had a walking tour that people could do on their own, looking at the context all around the site. So not just the property and the former bank building, but the grove of heritage trees, looking at the relationship to the shopping center, looking to the relationship of the park across the way. Next, please. And from there, taking all of this together and then dovetailing off of our stakeholder interviews, we prepared the feasibility report, and that's what's included with the staff report this evening. The feasibility report includes a summary of the community outreach, so much of what we've just discussed here, as well as a more detailed summary of the stakeholder engagement, those 6 interviews that we had with the various developers. Then we've also had some case studies, which we'll show in the next slide, and then the market analysis. Next, please. There were 6 different case studies included in the feasibility study. Some of these were also shown in photos when we did the community outreach. I won't go through all of these right here. If there are questions, we do have more information on each of these as backup slides. But there's a write-up of each of these case studies in the feasibility study, and in particular, how each one is relevant or instructive to the 70 Old County Road site. Next, please. So looking at the feasibility, and this is drawing mostly from our stakeholder interviews, but also from other sources. So for example, some of these data points, these were data points that we also showed in the community engagement. We wanted, on the one hand, to have very open engagement and hear from people and their ideas, but also to be realistic and show, if we were to look at one of these options, what are some of the key data points. So for example, if it's housing or mixed use, what each of the developers told us, and particularly if it was affordable housing, is the ideal range of units would be somewhere between 50 and 80, maybe as low as 40 if it were supportive housing, but you could also go as high as 80. Market rate, the numbers were, I'd say more, the concerns we have from the market rate developers was the site is smaller than a typical market rate development, which is not to say it can't be done. But at least two of the developers said it's at a little over an acre. It's a bit on the small side. Affordable housing developers, on the other hand, they are more accustomed to working on these very small sites. Having said that, 50 to 80 units on a 1 acre site, if you do the math, generally speaking, that would equate to somewhere between a 3 and 5 story building. We know there's sensitivity to building height and mass, and again, this being a gateway location, but we did want to be really upfront with the community and in this feasibility study to say, if the developer is saying they need this many units to make it work, what does that look like on a 1 acre site? Next, please. For each of the case studies, or for each of the options, we have opportunities and constraints. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but pulling a few of these out that are important is housing is always in demand. So that becomes an opportunity. It's also an opportunity for the city to satisfy some of its housing allocation obligations with the state. There's potential funding if it's affordable housing development. Funding is competitive, but the developers did tell us they thought this site could be reasonably competitive, and sometimes it takes a few cycles of funding, but they thought that there could be options there. As a gateway, you could start creating some synchronicity with both the park and with the downtown, so it becomes really a kind of catalyst or a very strategic kind of development. But some of the constraints, particularly if you're wanting to do mixed use, then it starts to become a little more challenging to fit everything onto a 1.27 acre site, particularly if you want to have parking for both the commercial uses and the housing. Construction costs then get a little high also. So on the one hand, you've got the 50 to 80 units, which is the kind of optimal number for managing a housing development, but then that's also getting into more expensive construction with either a podium, concrete podium with the housing above. So it just becomes a little more expensive. And as we mentioned before, if you are reaching those 50 units, then you're talking about a larger building than maybe some people are expecting or comfortable with. Next, please. Looking at the commercial retail scenario, and there we had the 3 developers who have built projects like this. And here we're just looking at straight up retail or commercial uses. So it could include storefronts, it could include restaurant, any combination. A lot of these centers are built flexible so that it could accommodate different tenants over time. And again, we showed the 2 different options of either a kind of strip retail center or the one that has the more of an anchor tenant with a unique architectural approach. Looking at the data points for retail, generally, and this is rules of thumb in the world of commercial and retail, is you need a population base within 1 mile of about 12,000 to 18,000 people. In this case, that does not occur. Brisbane is a wonderful small town, but does not have 12 to 18,000 people. However, the other piece of it is trips per day passing by. Retailers like traffic. That may seem, most people don't like traffic, but retailers do because it provides a lot of visibility to their businesses. So they generally want to see about 20,000 trips per day passing by their retail stores and restaurants. And that is about what you have on Bayshore Boulevard. So that counteracts maybe some of the challenges with the smaller population base within 1 mile. The other thing, and it's a little harder to quantify, is people do work in Brisbane during the day, so that could be a daytime population that could complement the residential population. Next, please. So opportunities, high visibility, it's a gateway, so that could be an interesting way of creating an address for Brisbane right there on the corner, and maybe bringing in even further economic development into Visitation Avenue, into the downtown. There would, of course, be sales tax and lease potential from small tenants. The build out would be relatively simple. These are small one-story buildings, and so not as expensive as the multi-story that we looked at in the mixed use. And if these were built to contemporary standards, it's, you know, nowadays retailers and restaurants have different needs for how deep they want their storefronts, how wide they want their storefronts. So these could be designed for contemporary retailers. The challenge would be the demand. It's unclear whether there is sufficient demand, and there would be fears of vacancies if there weren't. The small site can certainly provide parking. Some of the centers we looked at in the case study had a lot of parking, even beyond what a zoning code would require, and that's often reflective of particular tenants saying we're not going to move in here unless we have a certain parking ratio that's very high. The adjacency to the shopping center could be either an opportunity or a constraint. There could be concern with vacancies with the adjacent shopping center that may inhibit new tenants wanting to come to a new center next door. On the other hand, there's great opportunities for the two to complement each other, and perhaps the new center could then rub off a little bit on the existing center as well. So I'd say more of the constraints were the uncertainty and just risk if you do end up with vacancies. Next, please. And then there was a community center. We did not develop as many design options for this, and it's mainly because of the constraints. So starting with the opportunities, there are, you know, it's great to hear from the community, lots of really creative ideas of what they would like to see in community facilities. However, the constraints are mainly related to cost. So not only was the site acquired at a cost, which we showed in that second slide, there's also debt servicing, and then there would be the construction of a building. So all of these are expenses. The revenue would be pretty negligible. You could certainly charge for some services and for some room rentals and such, but it would be a pretty high expense item compared to the other options. And then also, although, you know, an acre is a decent size, it's, as community centers go, it would limit how much you could accommodate on the site, provided you also wanted to provide a little bit of parking for those uses as well. Next, please. So the conclusions that we've come up with based on the analysis and talking to our developer stakeholders was that the most feasible in terms of just getting a project off the ground with a certain amount of certainty would be the mixed use, particularly if it's an affordable mixed use development. All three of the affordable developers said they could imagine pursuing a project at that site. They thought it was quite feasible and believable. There were caveats on the mixed use component. They did say they understand the need for it. They build it into their projects. Given the choice, they probably would not, but they understand as community priorities, they create the space. That would have some cost associated with it in terms of you can't necessarily include the development of a commercial space within affordable housing financing. So there would probably need to be additional subsidy to get that to work. but overall feasible. And we did have one market rate developer who did point to the project in San Bruno, which we referenced in the feasibility report, who did say that worked on a 1 acre site. So I'd say 2 of the 3 that we talked to said the site's too small for market rate. The third said that they thought it could work. So some of it comes down to which developer you get and are they willing and able to work on a smaller site. The commercial retail scenario, there's more risk. There's the volatility of the retail market. It is always changing, and this is something that shopping centers have to deal with all the time. So that would be the greatest unknown, is what amount of retail demand there is, and could that compete with other offerings throughout the region. You're given the population base is a little smaller, you do have a lot of that traffic that's passing by, but then that traffic is also passing by other retail centers on the way. So that's number 2 in the feasibility. It's a little less feasible right out the gate. Not to say it's impossible, but it would have more challenges. And then the last community center is just from the cost perspective is the least feasible out of the bunch. It would impose relatively high public costs, very little revenue, and there would be costs involved in constructions, operation, and debt servicing. So that would be the least feasible of the bunch that we looked at. Next, please. So with that, we are at the feasibility study. We are not at the end of the road. So you'll see our little timeline there on the side has changed to show what the path is going forward. Tonight, we are looking for direction on the preferred development concept of where to go forward from here. And then from there, we will dive in further, do more design studies, more options, and get into maybe more of the kind of architectural approaches, things like that, that are important to the community, and then vet those again with the community in additional outreach. And then, of course, have more review from the public and from the City Council. And then final, from there, final approval would be we would do a CEQA clearance as well, just to see what the options are for complying with the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, and then come up with an implementation strategy as well. That implementation strategy would be based on what the preferred option was, and then talk about how you might find a developer, how you might issue an RFP or a request for information. There's many different ways of finding a developer if that's the preferred direction. And we are a little behind schedule. We thought we would have this wrapped up by the end of this calendar year. So we're here in November with the feasibility study, but we do anticipate that we could have things completed by the end of the first quarter of 2026. And with that, I would like to thank you all for your attention and available to answer questions, as is Aaron Ackman and then staff as well.
All right, well, thank you, Kevin, for the presentation and the very thorough gathering of information from the community and laying it out for us. So I'll open it up to the council to ask you questions. So Madison, you want to start?
Sure. I just want to thank you so much for the work that you did on this. I'm really, really impressed. We've worked with a lot of consultants, and I love that you pulled in experts to talk about each plan, because that's the information that you really need. Like who's out there right now developing these kinds of sites, and what are they saying? So I thought that was incredibly informative, and really thankful that you put that information in here. Few questions. Is there an anchor that you would see fitting on that space right now? Like, is there any kind of anchor tenant that you could say, if you put that in, that might work?
You know, if I had to guess, and again, based on talking to the stakeholders, a restaurant tenant, those are the kinds of businesses that people will travel further for. So if we look at, for example, the hangar example in Scotts Valley, that one they had, originally it was called Fault Line Brewery, and they were identified they were part of the original development concept. It's now become Laughing Monk Brewery, which some people may know. They've got one here in San Francisco as well, up the street. So that kind of anchor with a name and with, doesn't have to be a brew pub, but something you have to think of who would want to drive, make a special trip to Brisbane. And then also, would people in Brisbane want to go to that anchor as well?
It seems like Asian markets are popping up all over the place. That's like
Go to Stonestown.
the hit. I just was at Stonestown, and I was like,
Yes.
"Whoa!"
Yeah,
They've really,
Thriving.
and same at Ceremony with Jalgachi. There's a Filipino market over in Dili City now too. It just seems like that's the hit thing right now. So
Stonestown's very instructive. I don't know, maybe any of you had seen, there was a New York Times article a while back comparing Stonestown with San Francisco
Yeah,
Center and
that's right.
the tale of two malls. And Stonestown's, they figured it out. They've got a great tenant mix, and yeah, some of those restaurants serve as anchors.
So, I mean, I think truly, to get just a standalone commercial tenant there like Trader Joe's, to me seems incredibly infeasible, and that's what your report has indicated as well.
And if I may, sorry to interrupt, but because I know this is something we heard from a lot of people, the challenge with Trader Joe's is the size of the site.
Yes.
People would love to see it. Everybody loves shopping at Trader Joe's. Either the building would fit or their parking would fit, but not both. So that, hate to break the bad news, but they like a lot of parking. They need a lot of parking. And
I really wanted to air that out. I was going to ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, how feasible did you think a Trader Joe's would be on that site?
Yeah.
And what would you say to people who wanted like a pharmacy or a credit union? I think, people want a bank back. We've already done some work in that area to talk with banks, but that's just our work. And so I'd be curious to know what you think about those two, because we hear that come up a lot as well.
Sure. I think it's interesting that, particularly if we're looking at the mixed use scenario, a credit union might be interested in that space on the ground floor. They don't need as much space as they used to. So the building that's out there right now is pretty big. Nowadays, if you look at new banks and credit unions and such, they take much smaller areas. And so as a standalone, I don't know if they would want to come as the only occupant. Now, if you look at the small commercial center, maybe they become one of the tenants in a mixed, multi-tenant space, but it's unlikely they're going to want to come and be the only tenant on the entire site.
How often do you see cities fund just commercial development?
Once upon a time, back when redevelopment was happening, it was something you would see. It was considered an economic development. So you would see these kind of new, often a mixed use or just some kind of special commercial development that was meant to become a catalyst or really kind of set off an economic development opportunity for the city. Don't see it as much now because redevelopment is not there. So it would be a little more unusual now.
Would you say part of that too is that cities are given such strong direction to focus on housing that plays a role into it as well?
I would say that's probably a fair assessment.
You only have so many dollars.
Yeah. Well,
work with.
and again, it's if you look at regionally, there's chronic shortage of housing. We all know that. And there's not a chronic shortage of retail space. So yeah, I think cities, given the choice, which urgency do you respond to? The housing one is pretty much always there.
And I know you mentioned the amount of units you'd need for affordable and market rate, but what about mixed? I don't know that I saw that in your report.
So you could do, if it
Mixed
was a
income,
market
I mean.
rate, then it could have a percentage I should know this, I'm not familiar whether you have an inclusionary requirement or not, but if it was a market rate development and it was subject to inclusionary, or if they're using state density bonus, then they would provide affordable units within a mixed income development, if that's the question.
Yeah, I guess my question is there a way to get less than 50 units? Like, what is the economics of that? Is 50 just like the bare bones amount? Or if there is mixed income, does that mean that you could build less, or that has no impact whatsoever?
So that number is mostly related to management efficiency, that's a large enough unit to have the on-site manager and to basically be able to run. Now, I am curious, there's an example here in Brisbane that is smaller than that. So, I don't know if they have issues with managing a smaller property like that.
They do.
It's possible.
They do.
It's possible with fewer units, and then maybe there's more subsidy, I don't know, or it's less competitive. Where the numbers can also come down is if it is some of the developments that are oriented to veterans in particular can have lower numbers because then they have the supportive services that are included, and that however that works with that model, the developers have told us they can go a little lower, like down to 40 units.
Got it.
Sure.
Thank you and good evening. The one other point I add is the complication when you go from 100% affordable to a mixed income, so let's say 80% market rate and 20% affordable, is you don't have access to the same funds. So it's just not as feasible because you can't get as much subsidy from a tax credit standpoint. So you could make it happen, but because of the challenges around market rate housing right now, it's difficult if you don't have access to all funds.
Yes.
And then, but if I
No, go.
wouldn't mind, if in a scenario where it was market rate, but we have affordable housing dollars, we could negotiate with that market rate housing developer and say, hey, we'd like some of the units to be affordable, and we'll give you some money to do that, and then that could be a
That's
situation.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. And you also, the fact you own the land right now, that's an additional subsidy as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So if we weren't contemplating mixed use, which would require more city dollars to do tenant improvements and those sort of things, and you can't finance that with affordable housing money. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I'll move on to my other question, see if it comes back to me. My other question is that if we wanted to say, okay, we're going to do affordable housing site here, then we purchase the property with general fund money. And so the city could then reimburse ourselves for the cost or some of it with money in the affordable housing fund. And if so, how much money is in that fund currently?
Let me start with the last question first. I have some information. This is unaudited as of last year. The low mod income housing special revenue fund has $7.5 million in it right now. I would actually defer to others. Do I have that correct?
I believe a couple million of that might be outstanding loans.
These are earlier figures, but yes. Okay.
Yeah, I think 4.2 is the
That's the number
cash.
that I thought.
Yeah.
My apologies.
Okay, so we could reimburse ourselves for a good portion, or we could subsidize, maybe we could take some of that money and, offset the affordable housing, and then there might be some left over to put into like tenant improvements or things of that nature to help that balance out. Correct? Okay. If my other question comes to me,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I'll pop back in. I'll write it
Okay.
down.
All right. Frank.
Thank you guys for not only preparing such a comprehensive report, but working with us throughout this entire process. It's been a pleasure. Just piggybacking off of Councilmember Davis's last question here regarding the 4.2 million. If we did a mixed use scenario, so that, let's just call it retail for purposes of discussion, we can only tap into that 4.2 million for the section of the property, the portion of the property that would be housing, and the city would be on the hook for the remainder that would be the retail. Is that a true statement?
That's correct. So generally we did pose this to the affordable housing developers. They said, they could build a shell for the retail to go into, but they can't finance the tenant improvements for that shell with the affordable housing funds. So that would then need to be furnished by presumably the city, because tenants would probably also want it to be finished and ready to move in as well.
I remembered my question. Do you mind? Because it
dive
goes
in.
with
Go
this.
ahead.
Okay, so let's take mixed use out of the equation for a second. And do you anticipate, other than gifting the land, that the city would need to contribute more to make an affordable housing development happen?
It would depend. So we did ask that to the developers and said, basically, is the land enough? Because that's a lot.
Because it sounded like there was some, like they might
Yeah.
that, but
They said it really depends on the cycle. Like if there's not as much competition, then there may be, they basically said it, they call it a funding stack. So it's kind of whatever funds you can secure. If the land is sufficient, then, and they can find the financing to make everything else work, then that would be it. But if something, either construction costs are really high, or they can't get as much funding as they had hoped from county, state, federal, whichever source, then there's going to be a gap that needs to be filled. And so it's not a satisfying answer because it's,
no telling.
but they did say, and Aaron, you can certainly please, but that's why they said sometimes it takes a few rounds of applying for the funding to kind of get it all to work.
What's a round? How long is that?
I think it's like every few months,
Okay,
twice a year.
twice a
yeah.
year.
So it's not unusual to pursue funding through several different rounds and then getting it all to line up. But Aaron, please.
But we're not talking years. We're talking.
It could be
18
years.
months?
It could be years sometimes, depending on the complexity of the development. One thing I'll add is when the city puts out their RFP, a request for proposal for a nonprofit developer or affordable housing developer to do that, that's one thing that you really want to vet, is how strong is this nonprofit or this developer in accumulating funds and leveraging different funds so that the responsibility of the city will be less. One example I could give is when my previous role, I was community development director in Redwood City. We had a downtown property on Bradford Street that the city owned, former redevelopment site. The council really wanted to see senior affordable housing there. They wanted to see ground floor daycare. That was kind of their vision. So we put out an RFP, very competitive process, 7 different developers proposed, and we really had that criteria. A, can you deliver the ground floor daycare? What's your plan for that? What's your plan for upstairs for the affordable units, and what type of subsidy do you think is going to be required? So we went through that process, ended up selecting a developer. Took a while to put everything together. So it's a very complicated process, but now there's 108 units with ground floor daycare at the bottom. The city's vision was implemented. So you could do it, but the next step, as we saw on that slide, is really thinking through the city's RFP once you had that vision to create a really competitive process to get the right developer in.
Thank you. Sorry. I'll turn it back over to Frank.
No problem. Good question. You just had a slide and it showed the timeline going forward from this point forward. And I'm just curious, and I've been pestering Jeremy, our city manager, all week. He's done with me at this point, regarding the Surplus Land Act. So by following the steps in that timeline that you just, are we satisfying what we need to do as a city from a Surplus Land Act standpoint?
If staff wants to answer that, I will step aside. I can answer, but
I don't believe their timeline factored in the time period for Surplus Land Act implementation or compliance. I believe it's 90 days, Julia. I believe there's a 90-day window where you have to open up eligibility for surplus land if the city is going to declare it surplus. And it raises all sorts of questions because what is a surplus land, what is a public use. So it's not necessarily cut and dried that any sort of deal with the developer would necessarily trigger the Surplus Land Act. If you're going to certainly sell it to a commercial developer or something like that, that's very cut and dried. If you're going to try to enter into some sort of agreement with a nonprofit developer, that's a whole nother situation. But that would be, again, part of the implementation. If we do an RFP for that sort of land use, if that's the council's desire, we'd want to bake that in as well as how to implement and comply with the Surplus Land Act, if applicable.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Okay. Councilmember Mackin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kevin and Aaron, your reputation precedes you, and your work was outstanding. Anybody who comes to these meetings knows I go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. Usually have lots of questions. Every time I had a question, I read further and went, well, there's the answer, there's the answer. So I appreciate my colleagues. You've asked some really good questions. I don't have any more questions. I have lots of comments, but I'm waiting for the comment period. Thank you
This
for all
never
your hard work.
happens. That's
You're like gold,
This
like
is
gold.
great.
Thank you.
Amazing. That's a gold star for you.
Very thorough, very thorough.
Okay, well, thank you for an excellent report so far. As you indicated, this isn't the end of the line. You're giving us this feasibility report, so that we can give you direction for the next steps. And so, in order to help me to be able to come up with a suggestion of next steps with my council colleagues, I do have some questions. And so, again, thank you for soliciting the opinions of folks who this is what they do for a living, whether it's in the for-profit or in the affordable housing realms. It's great to get that feedback. And so on page 220, and it's regarding the residential mixed-use developers summary, and it's regarding the market rate. So I'm just going to read off a couple of the things that people had said. Two stakeholders concluded that market rate housing at the site is unlikely to be financially viable under current market conditions due to the size. They suggested that if the adjacent shopping center were included in a future development, there would be adequate site area for viable development. Were you getting any feedback from the public or others in regards to potentially, partnering with the adjacent property owner to look at reducing, potential negative impacts on some of these options that you're presenting?
I don't have a whole lot of intelligence on the shopping center with their intent.
We don't either. So
Yeah.
we're all on the same page.
So I would
there.
say the developers, they were basically looking at aerial photos and saying, well, what's going on over here? And, because from their perspective, they're looking at land assembly. So they're looking at how can we, for them, 1 acre is a little small. How can we get to that magic 2 acres that they felt they needed? So logical thing is to look next door. But that wasn't coming from any kind of, other than just looking at a map and saying, if, for example, that site were included, then you've got something.
Yeah.
It's purely speculative.
All right. Well, you and your colleagues, as you're gathering your information and evaluating the site, what do you think? Do you think that's something that the city should explore, or just potential partnering, or should it just stay focused on this side here?
It's tricky with having dialogue with the shopping center owners, if it's possible, could certainly be constructive. And in fact, with all of the scenarios, the two literally, they share an access easement anyway, so they are conjoined in some respects. If you were to go with the commercial option, then that becomes really kind of a continuous arc of commercial development. If you go with the housing option, with or without mixed use, then you do have commercial and housing next to each other, so they could be very complementary to each other. Yeah, I'd just say it's really, it comes down to our parties able to communicate with each other and
And willing.
able to have a constructive dialogue, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, one of the stakeholders, suggested that the site could be adequate for the market rate housing, but included that if you did the ground floor retail, and you had brought this up in your report, that well, there's going to be some difficulty trying to find the parking for both. That just, you have this, you have this piece, and you're trying to fit things in, and things are pushing out, here, and so
It's a tight squeeze, yes.
it's a very, very tight squeeze. So it a lot of what you're presenting, it makes you think, well, is it really feasible? Can we do something on this site? So the two of the stakeholders suggested that 4 stories of housing above 1 or 2 levels of parking for a total of 5 to 6 stories. And that seems to be kind of the theme, even with the affordable units, that we're looking at some really tall buildings. There was an example that you gave in San Bruno. And, it's a nice looking building. It's on a smaller footprint, but it's on El Camino. We're not El Camino.
Right.
Yeah, this is, granted, Bayshore's a pretty busy street, and maybe, some future scenario for Brisbane is going to be, Bayshore's completely developed like El Camino. I doubted that, I would think if that would have occurred, it would have already happened. So, trying to stay within our character while also wanting to do something with the site, definitely challenging. So, looking at the affordable housing piece, so this is on page 221, and it says development scenarios discussed during interviews range between 50 to 100 units, 4 to 5 stories tall. I know you mentioned that maybe you could get 40 units. That would be the smallest. There was an example, I think it was something Eagle, which just, it was just, okay, let's get a cardboard box, put some holes in it, and call it good. And that's, no one wants that kind of design feature at the entrance of their town. I'm curious, John or Julia, how many units are at the senior site?
14.
14 units, okay. Granted, they were built in a different
Different
era, and we own the property, and we partnered with the affordable housing developer. We had some loans. The county gave some money as well. But I guess something like that is just not practical.
You don't see developments of that scale in this region of the Bay Area much these days. If you go further afield into, Sonoma County or Central Valley, you're still seeing the kind of 2 to 3 story with the surface parking. I think here partly what is also creating the height is the parking with any kind of housing, whether it's affordable or market rate. Although there is transportation in the vicinity, people are still going to have a demand for parking. We ask the developers how much parking, and it varies from 1 space per unit to 1.5, something like that, which is relatively low, but it's still parking spaces. So that would be your ground floor with whatever you might put some screening on it, but then you don't really start to build the housing until you're already in the air 1 floor up. So that's how you end up with these taller heights.
Yeah, one of the one of the suggestions was that the ground floor commercial or community uses could be considered, but stakeholders indicated that such spaces are not typically funded through affordable housing financing sources. I know you brought that up, and so providing funding. I mean, I think, at least for me as a council member, and I don't know how my council colleagues feel about this. It'd be difficult for me to say, okay, yeah, let's fund these commercial slots underneath the affordable housing. If it was a daycare, okay, that seems like a use that is needed in our community. That seems like something that is appropriate for cities to provide funding for. What kind of dollars are we looking at if for something like that where you would?
So the one developer who did give us a number suggested about $1 million subsidy. And I think, that is a good point. Whatever happens on that ground floor should be considered an amenity or an asset to the community. So whether it's daycare, community use, it could be retail. I'm not pushing retail, but some people may consider that to also be an asset. So I think it is public subsidy towards something that the community ideally values, and
Okay.
however
Alright.
that's framed.
And then, just kind of thinking of, the small commercial space. And recently I was in Mill Valley. My wife and youngest daughter, they're gluten-free, so they seek out these gluten-free places. There's a bakery called Flourcraft. It's in the old mill lumberyard site, and granted, it was a private property owner, and they transformed their lumberyard into this really cute boutique little retail area. And when it first went up, I was like, oh boy, I don't know, if this is gonna thrive or not, because it's on this, pretty small sliver of land. There's just a few parking spots, but actually, it's a really nice destination, and people from all over the place go to it, including folks who live in Mill Valley. Like to your point, Madison, we have this pressure to build housing. It's just coming, pretty hard on us, and so it has an impact. And we just think, okay, well, we got to do housing, but without, at least in my opinion, not having a big enough footprint, housing doesn't. I don't know. To me, it's not really penciling out, but that one particular example that you gave in Scotts Valley, it's like, oh, okay, well, if the city got behind something like that, and you're right, back in the day, we used redevelopment money, and it wasn't our general fund money. So in a sense, it was like, well, it's not really our money. We're getting this free money. Okay, well, why not spend it on revitalizing blighted areas? Not to say that our entrance of town is blighted. Some might say that, but it definitely needs some work. But that money, those sources aren't available anymore. So it would come out of our general fund. Purchasing this property came from our general fund, and currently we have a loan to pay off purchasing that property. So my question is, do you think that perhaps some kind of boutique kind of retail, not looking like the shopping center, or some other strip mall, but something that is unique, something that would be a draw? Our town is beautiful. It is a unique place. It's so different than anything else around us. And maybe some of these models that are more for South City or San Bruno, maybe something different might be better for us. So I see you nodding, so if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so, and I want to emphasize, so the feasibility report, it kind of points to what is considered the most feasible, but ultimately it is the community's choice. A retail or commercial use has a little more risk, a little more uncertainty than the housing, but it's not to say it's infeasible. It's just got a few more potential tailwinds on it. Or is it headwinds? Anyways, it's
Yeah, headwinds.
headwinds. Thank you. And that occurs with any kind of retail center. You know, the good ones like Stonestown keep reinventing themselves again and again and again and again. That's what you have to do because it is so volatile. Demands change, people's preferences change, retail, you know, tenants become popular or not. So that's where the uncertainty is, but it's not to say it's impossible. That's the challenge is kind of getting everything lined up just right. But if it works, yeah, then example in Mill Valley, it sounds wonderful. So there, and I will say, yeah, the one in Scotts Valley is also a really nice development. So it can work.
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, that's definitely something to be, something to consider. You know, in regards to that, I mean, obviously the city could, you know, make that a decision. This is what we want to do, and move forward with the developer to create that vision of what we would want. But then there's, of course, you know, we purchase this land, and, you know, how do we get our money back for something like this? Are you familiar with any situations where the city has a land lease and you know, with like rent to own, where eventually the city would be reimbursed?
Yeah, that can happen with any of these scenarios. So it would depend on the kind of development. It's not unusual for particularly either affordable housing or straight up commercial to have some kind of underlining ownership. And sometimes it's surprising to find out who owns land underneath something. So that, you know, the way you would approach this going forward is you would do a request for either qualifications, or you could even do what's known as a request for information, where you just kind of put out, is there anyone here any takers? Like, is there anyone at all interested? You can then kind of gauge the market, and you could put those kind of terms in, say this is either a long-term lease or it's a land lease. The only time land leases don't really work is if it's ownership housing. Then it makes it difficult to do those developments. But if it's a rental product or an affordable product, certainly a land lease is a possibility, or a
Okay.
commercial development.
And then I know we had one of the slides that showed what the city has paid, and if we could bring that slide back up, please. Just want to get a little bit more clarity. I think it's important for the public to, you know, just to have a clear understanding. Also for me as well. It's one of the first ones.
There.
Yep,
Back.
next.
Okay. All right. So, so we have this purchase price of about 4.2 million. Do we have kind of the time we purchased it to today, how much the city has paid in interest and bank fees, what that total amount is?
I'm going to ask Carolina, who's online, if she can share that information. I think you're still there, Carolina.
Hi.
Hey, Carolina.
Hi. I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, could you provide the total amount that the city has paid since purchasing the property, in regards to bank fees and interest payments?
Yes, I could pull that up.
And
Sorry.
if there are any other costs that you're aware of, if you wouldn't mind just, I guess, adding it all in there, if that's easy for you.
Yeah, we had that schedule that I could provide.
Okay,
Sorry, just pulling it up.
that's okay.
Did you want to move on to next question while I pull that up, or?
I have a question in the interim. If
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
done-
why don't
if
you go,
don't have any
Madison?
more. Quick question about using the village parcel coupled with our parcel. So I imagine that okay, this is a two-part question. Let's say you have a developer, they come in, they want to buy both parcels and have one project. I'm assuming the intention would be to demolish everything on the site, start fresh and build something new, correct? Okay.
That's usually the case, yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought you would say. And I don't know that you know this now, but it would be interesting if the direction from the council is to consider a situation in which that is even possible, considering who owns the village. That's a separate conversation, but it would be good to know how much realistically would a developer spend to acquire both parcels to make the equation work, whether it's with affordable and mixed use or mixed use and market rate. It's good for us to know, because we know how much we would want to get for the property, right? We would want to come out mostly
Breaking
whole.
even.
And we know what their number is because they've shared that internally with us, what they would like to get if they were thinking of selling. And it would just be really good for us to know, are we close or are we really far away? Because I think that's really eye-opening in the feasibility of what it would take to make that happen. So I know you probably don't have that off the top of your head, but going, in future planning of this and the next phase of this, that's key information that this body should have.
And I think that's to the extent our stakeholders they're very generous with their time and talent. They may be willing to continue talking with us, and we could ask, what are the kind of numbers for land costs that are supportable for this kind of development, and are the numbers that are either on the city side, or if the shopping center has numbers that they have in mind, does that work with what we see in the market right now? We can at least ask those questions. Sure.
Because they wouldn't be buying it to operate, with the existing tenants and just operate or needing to know what maybe the current rents play factor. I doubt it, but it's really a land cost because they just need to acquire, demolish, and start over. And so
exactly to that point, it's the cost is going to be what are they able to do on it, right? That's ultimately what they're going to say is we could build X amount of units, we could build this amount of commercial square footage, that's going to get us this amount in rent per month, so we're allowed to spend Y a month Y on this land. So it's going to be something called residual land value. They're going to go through an equation to say this is how much we could spend. So it's almost a chicken and egg type thing where they may have a vision, and if we could do exactly what we want, we could spend 10 million on this. But if they don't know that and there's some uncertainty, then they may spend less on it.
And we would just say, assume that parcel zone, assume it's all zoned for housing.
Right.
Right. Like, what do those numbers
Right,
mean?
and they would, so they would probably want to drill down, okay, what does it mean? How high can we go? How many units? What type of housing? That type of thing. But yeah, that was, the more certainty there is for them, the more they're allowed to kind of put money together to do that equation and, get investor certainty essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So, talking about, having certainty, so, what steps could the city take to provide that certainty? Is it through like a zoning or master plan or like?
Right, so obviously there's like different levels of certainty. So with the city-owned parcel, you have a lot of certainty because you own it, right? So you could create the vision and you ultimately sell it, and you have some wiggle room of what you sell it for. So that's what you're able to do. Yeah, so a developer is going to look at what's the underlying zoning, what's the process that's set forth within whatever planning document, how much discretion is there on the back end that the city has once they go through this process? Will they be approved or won't they be approved? So it's really what are they allowed to build? What are they allowed to build, whether in the zoning or a specific plan or something like that, and what's the process for approval?
So I'm curious, do you think it's in the city's best interest to be like more defined in what it wants before putting it out there to, to the marketplace, or, have greater flexibility so that when someone comes in, they can come up with ideas that maybe you didn't think of, but it aligns with what they think they can do to make it feasible.
Right. So that's that's a good question. I think that a lot of cities are wrestling with right now. It's, you want to have a document that has certainty, but also allows flexibility in the terms of the land uses, depending upon whatever market cycle it is. So there could be a situation where you create like an architectural vision for the site, let's say, of what you want the balance of land uses to be overall, what you want it to look like. But there's probably, the best plans have some flexibility in it, but it's a little bit difficult when you have a site this small, because you're not talking like about a big downtown area.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, that totally makes sense.
I would imagine, though, if it's land you own, you're open, it's city-owned property, right? We're open to selling it to a developer to do the right project, or doing some kind of exchange if it's affordable housing. When you have private property owned by a private entity, I would imagine that a stakeholder, first thing they would want to know is the property for sale.
Right.
I mean, that is the biggest factor. And whether you're going to spend all this time investing into coming up with a great, amazing plan for a property in which a property owner is not willing to sell.
Right.
So I would think that stakeholders would really be looking at, not only what does it cost, but will someone even sell it to me? And I know everything's for sale at the right price.
Right.
But those numbers have to, those numbers have to be in alignment.
Right, right. And it is true. I would say everything if this was 2019, it's a different situation than it is in 2025. Because when interest rates were low, people could make a lot higher offers on things and convince people. Now it's a little bit more difficult. Maybe changes in a couple of years, but that's, the current environment. And I think that's reflected why you see a lot of that in the feasibility studies. It's just a tricky market right now.
Tricky, yeah, absolutely. So Carolina, do you have those numbers?
Yes, I do. So you were looking for the total cost from purchasing the building through operating costs for this year?
So the total cost that the city has bared since purchasing the property and up to today's date.
Yeah, so we're looking at so it's roughly 4.9 mil, so rounded up to 5 million. That would be including the purchase of the building, the interest we've paid on the loan that we took on to reimburse ourselves, and then just some operational and also the consulting fees that we've paid so far.
Got it. And what's the current amount still owed on the loan?
So still owed on the loan, are you with principal or we have about
just
1.3? We have 1.3 million left in interest that we owe.
Yeah, no, so if the city, one of the suggestions was and not to say this is what we're going to do, but if we were going to make the site all affordable and we have affordable housing funds and we pay off ourselves, so, if we wanted to cash out, what's that amount?
So again, it's the 1.3 is the interest that is still owed on the building.
What's the ending balance for the loan?
I apologize, I don't have that in front. I will grab that.
All right, does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, so we can come back with that information, but right now, why don't we open it up to the public? So, Ms. Linda Sama, come on up, please.
I think there's slips too.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you, Ingrid. Okay, I'll get you next, Michael.
Linda Salmon. Hello. I obviously I was there at the first time when you guys announced that the land was being bought, and you offered us, I guess it was in May, right, to come and talk about the alternatives, what we were interested in. So some of those alternatives, like having a park there, were not included, interestingly enough. And I wasn't the only person who said, let's put a park there. And the reason for that is, well, a lot of you weren't here 70 years ago. The reason why the county road is shaped the way it is, that was the shoreline. Where the mall sits right now was the E-hole. It was a combination of fresh water and salt water. And our parents swam in there all the time. By the time we were kids, we were told, no, don't swim in there because the contamination from the Mazzetti's motel sewers seeping into there made it not quite as clean as it could have been. And then you probably weren't around here in the mid-'80s, I think it was, when we had our last big flood, when we had still Mazzetti's motel and where the park is now, and Mazzetti's trailer park. And the fire department, such as it was, the rescue department, people were at least 6 and 8 feet underwater. And that is why there is a park there instead of buildings. So I don't think that it's feasible, quite frankly, or safe to build anything there at all. I think it should be returned to a wetlands park. When I was a kid, if you walk down to the Old County Road from Visitation, around where Mazzetti's Motel was, you had a whole thicket of cattails first. And cattails growing in water, okay? And then beyond that was the big E-hole where you had the freshwater and the saltwater confluence. And then all around it were wetland plants and lots of frogs and butterflies and other critters. When we had the Easter egg hunts where the Crocker Park, where we are right now, okay, sometimes we couldn't have them because it was flooded, completely flooded, like up to your knees, flooded. I'm just letting you know that the actual terrain of this place, some people don't seem to understand, and there's a reason why there's no Mazzetti's Motel there anymore or Mazzetti's trailer park there anymore. There's a reason why there shouldn't be anything there. B of A bought the land, long ages ago, and sold it for the shopping center and put a little bank there, which is horrible, should be taken down. Make it a park. Make it a park. I thought that finally we were getting smart about our money and buying property for the safety of the community, the same way that we did the park instead of putting, they even tore down the original schoolhouse building there because they said, oh, well, it's not safe, okay? And they didn't want to keep it there. That was historical. It could have been kept. I'm just saying, let's get our priorities straight in terms of what we're actually doing. I think safety is number one. Safety is number one. And it's one thing if you put a little park there, people can come and go. If you want to keep a few extra parking places for the park, park at your own risk, et cetera, et cetera. I'm serious. A little earthquake, it's finished. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Linda. All right, up next is Michael Barnes.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Michael Barnes. I'm a Brisbane resident. The Parkside Plan you adopted in 2017 specifies a maximum housing density of 28 units per acre. The Parkside Plan also includes the Bank of America site, for which the City Council vision was a single-story commercial district. Council and staff narratives during the Bank of America purchase focused on the site's location at the entrance to town and importance of protecting it from an external developer. It was disappointing that the City Council did not realize that the Bank of America site was already protected by Brisbane's zoning ordinance. Responsible investors conduct a market analysis of feasible uses of a site before purchasing. You did not consult the analysis of this site in your 4-year-old Parkside Plan before purchase. The Crocker Trail Master Plan, the Sierra Point Park Plan, and now the Bank of America Plan all sat idle for years. You bought the Bank of America site in December of 2021. Then for 3 years, you did nothing to plan the site. So far, you've paid $500,000 in interest for the Bank of America. For a council that often claims you have no money and is looking to increase taxes, this was avoidable fiscal waste. While I would prefer that the free market decide what is built there, your consultant suggests an affordable housing project that relies heavily upon city financial support. One financial consideration is your bond rating. You currently don't have a bond rating because of city council management. Not having a bond rating represents risk to your potential development partners. And when you regain a rating, it may be lower because of the way you manage the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. This is according to your bond rating agency, S&P. Your suggested housing project would far exceed your Parkside maximum density of 28 units per acre and be between 40 and 70 units per acre, which repeats one of the lessons from the Parkside process. You ignored the power of your zoning to protect the entrance to town, unnecessarily buying this property, and abandoned the Parkside plan, then undertook another process that confirmed the Parkside plan lessons. Delaying action on the site for years has cost $500,000 to date. I'm concerned that the city as a developer could take many years to complete a project, and if affordable housing is the project, it could take years just to obtain funding. And what is the final cost to Brisbane? Your reason for purchasing the Bank of America site was to protect the entrance to town. If you choose to build a wall of affordable housing without retail, residents may wonder what this protected them from. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Michael. Ingrid, do we have more slips? All right, thank you. All righty, Chris.
Thank you, Chris Florkowski. This isn't a comment so much on the development itself, but on the process. And I'd really be interested in some of the observations you might have for us. One of the things that I've seen through the Facebook page for residents of Brisbane is that we have a tendency as citizens to not see this situation as citizens. We see ourselves as consumers, and that city council, city staff are like the restaurant, and I have come in to be served, and I am to be taken care of, and I am to get what I want. It's a very consumer kind of relationship with city government, and that we're not seeing our role and our responsibility as citizens. And what I'd like to do is invite the city council, because I think, and city staff, I think we tend to bend over backwards to serve that consumer, that customer service kind of mentality, and remind the citizens that we are in fact citizens, and participation is very important. And if I think there are definitely opportunities when it comes to communication. I think we can improve the communication so that people feel fully informed about what the city is doing. And I invite you, if you've made any observations that staff might be able to incorporate, I hope you share those with us. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chris. All righty, anyone? Michelle, come on up, please.
Michelle Salmon, Brisbane resident. I'm so sorry I missed your presentation, but I had a class and as fast as I could get here. I did read the report that was in the thing, and I have a couple of concerns. One is safety. I did send you photographs and shared them with the city manager, et cetera, that actually shows that area as part of the bay, underwater, lots of water. And we are working on our sea level rise issues right now. One of the other things, I'm not sure if I sent it or not, but lead poisoning is a really, that area has been next to a highway for 100 years. There is a lot of lead deposition there from traffic on Old Bay Shore. And we really need to take that into account, particularly if we plan on any housing there, ground level housing. And so that's really an issue for me, because lead is extremely toxic to children and it's not good for anyone. And it's an issue all along Bay Shore and an issue with the Baylands and some other things like that. So I am concerned about that. I am concerned about sea level rise. I am concerned about the instability of that area and how badly it floods. So whatever we build is going to have to be higher than what we'd like. I wouldn't want to build anything higher than about 3 stories plus what we're going to need to buffer for sea level rise. But I think it's time we start thinking outside the box. And first of all, I'd like to commend the City Council for their courage to buy that property. It should have never been sold to Bank of America in the first place. They didn't keep their word. They never actually built a bank with a foundation. That's still a portable building there, piece of crap. And then they ran out on us when we needed them the most. So I'm really not happy with them at all. And I'm sorry that our forefathers, including my own father, convinced Bank of America to come here and put their bank here. And I've banked with them all that time. And they did not service well, and now they're not servicing any of their customers well. Banks are closing right and left. Us getting a bank is really probably not going to happen. But if we look at that site as being the entrance to Brisbane and really use our imagination for something that's way better than what we're looking at, even though you guys did some really beautiful renderings, I've been kind of thinking about alternatives like Carmel. I went shopping in Carmel with my niece, and she took me to this amazing shopping place that had a cheese heaven and a bunch of other shops. And it was basically stories with an inner courtyard and sort of an outer view. And what is one of the most wonderful assets of Brisbane view shed is the lagoon. And when the moon comes up over the bay and shines on the lagoon, or when the sun comes up, it's just gorgeous. I've posted numerous pictures. Why don't we think about that in developing this site? And also, one of the other most beautiful views is our mountain. And why don't we think about that in developing our site? Why don't we make it a 3-story structure with restaurants on the top level that face the view, where this would become a destination where people would want to come and look out over the bay. It's going to be beautiful. I mean, there'll be the new park with the Baylands development, and then we can look at the mountain. And the next level down could be sort of make it a courtyard, where we have a courtyard in the middle with retail shops and little kiosks and places where people can sit and be sheltered from the wind, and have the ground floor be podium parking, so that we're up off if it floods. And sort of create this. I don't know if you've ever stood on the balcony at the shopping center and looked up at the mountain, but it's an incredible view. And there's so much we could do there if we just thought a little bit more outside the box, and we made it more of a circular thing that really brought people together. We could have, community spaces there. We could have retail spaces there. We could have restaurant spaces there. And we could have loitering spaces there, gathering spaces. If we thought about not a box, but something else. And something that will last through time. And the other thing is, Cliff, you were talking about, how can we get out from under this? Well, there's no reason that a developer can't lease the land from the city of Brisbane, and we retain ownership because that's the entrance to our town, and they lease it, just like we did at the marina. A 50-year lease, a 99-year lease. We got Parcel R back. That was a 100-year lease. And so I think we need to really start thinking sort of in a bigger picture, taking into account all these things. I don't think it's a place for housing. I really don't. I know we need housing. And there's been so many misinformation things about the park site plan. We don't own that land. We can't force Prologis to build housing. We can't force them to do that. Okay? Unless maybe we could rezone it for housing, and but I mean, this is the thing. I still think that we made a really good decision in buying this property. I really, really do. And in the meanwhile, we should be utilizing it for all the things we could. Excess parking for, the park and all kinds of other things. So stay the course. Don't be intimidated by the naysayers. You know, in the long picture, $500,000 isn't much compared to what the risks are and the benefits that could be by taking a bigger view of this and really putting it out there. Maybe having a contest by architects to see who could come up with the best design under certain level of parameters. So that's how I feel.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
All righty. Paul, come on up, please.
Paul Buscal, Brisbane resident. Thank you, council and consultants. So my thoughts for that site have been many. One in particular would be a grocery store with a pharmacy, and that has been said, but it's also been said that we only have, 5,000 people, and you need to have 12,000 people or whatever the number is. But it seems like we could challenge that number by establishing the fact that we are like in a desert of a decent grocery store and a pharmacy, and so are members in Daly City and South San Francisco. And it was said that it's got to be within a mile radius, but there's a lot of neighborhoods that don't have a good grocery store to go to. So maybe we could challenge that number and have a magnet, or whatever that term you're using, an anchor store, come in to the site. As far as the housing and the requirements from the state that have been imposed on communities to have housing established, or at least planned for, isn't the North Hill site going to satisfy any immediate needs for housing in Brisbane? I thought that was kind of like going to be a big deal, and that's kind of like happening. So we shouldn't even be talking about housing for that site. But with that said, if I may, I have a proposal that I'd like to run by the consultants as well. We'll always have control over what's built out there, and it seems like we end up having to sell it to a developer that's going to take on the development. Like Midway Village, I know if that was like 175 low-income housing units that they built, and they always say that low income isn't, a lot of developers don't want to get into that, but they did it in Midway and Daly City. I'm not bringing up that development issue, but I would like to see the city do this land transfer, and I've said it before, we need senior housing, we need teacher housing, we need low-income housing. We don't need more affordable housing, for sure. And employee housing, or whatever cities are doing out there to accommodate their people that serve the communities. But I would like to see us purchase the 23 Club, the cafe next door, 25 Visitation, the parking lot that's owned on San Bruno Avenue by the previous owners of the 23 Club. And I know there's multiple owners that own that, and I've talked to them about doing a land swap, and they don't want to do a land swap. They want money for the properties, okay? Now, those are sites that could satisfy affordable low-income housing, as well as a new senior center. And I know, to your points about costs that are incurred to the city when you're involved in building something for yourself, as opposed to selling the property. but you also mentioned that the low-income housing can also get subsidized in many different ways to get it built, whether it's Habitat for Humanity or whatever you do. But the last thing I want to say, if I may,
Okay.
and it's not about this site, but it's just because we're talking about housing and the needs. I would like to see a program that we do in Brisbane to where our seniors could purchase a new condo in Brisbane that's something that they can live in, because a lot of people in this town, because we're on a hill for a lot of parts, have severe mobility issues on their properties and problems with their residents. And I think we should create this opportunity, whether it's the Parkside Plan or whatever it is, because there are a lot of people in this town that don't want to leave Brisbane, but shouldn't be in their houses, and have expressed that they would like to be able to purchase something here in town. So
Definitely.
maybe we could work on that.
Thank you, Paul. That was
But
awesome.
thank you.
All righty. So, anybody else? All right. So
I would like to request a 10-minute break.
absolutely, let's do that.
Okay.
everybody, let's get back to the meeting. Okay, so we're at the point in the meeting for council discussion. And so we'll start on the right side.
Oh,
I'm
I
sorry,
just had a
Mr. Mayor, before we jump in, there were some additional figures.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, thank you.
So we have that in a slide form, and I know Carolina can speak to some of it as well. Angel, in the backup slides, there's a couple slides. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, there was a good interruption.
Well, let me see.
Should be at the very end of the slide deck, Angel. Here we go. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so you were looking for how much remaining on the balance of the loan?
Correct.
And so we have about 4.1 million left in principal at the end of this fiscal year.
Okay, so there's still 4.1 left in principal, and the loan is a 30-year loan?
That is correct.
Okay, and so it looks like, and how much have we paid so far in interest?
I apologize, 20 year.
It's a 20-year loan. Okay, so and how much have we paid so far in interest? I know I guess this 0.6 or so is all the cost.
Right.
But, right.
So
Yeah.
but we've paid about 550,000.
About 550. Okay.
Yeah.
And so if we had the property for the full length of the loan, how much interest would be paid?
Total would be 1.85 million.
1.85 million. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay.
I had a couple of questions
question.
actually
That's right. I'm
for
sorry,
Good
Madison.
City.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind. This came up when we had our one-on-one meeting, and I threw it out to you, and you're like, huh, interesting. But we didn't get too into it, and so I just thought I would bring it back in case you'd given it any more thought. When we talked, I had mentioned that we have the teen center site, which is in close proximity. Obviously, it's not next door. But I'm wondering about if you have any comments, or if this is just something you would need to get back to us on, about if we did an affordable housing project that was spread across both those sites. And would you be able to bring the density down at Bank of America if you're putting some of the units at the teen center site, or if it's too far away where it just doesn't make sense at all?
You might be able to. It'd probably depend on the developer and whether it's an affordable developer or market rate developer. If they can manage the two sites together, then yeah, that could be a possibility to look into. I know jurisdiction I worked at previously did have an RFP out with two sites across the street from each other, and one of the developers proposed splitting the units between the two sites. So yeah, it's been done. You'd need to find a developer that would want to do it, but that could be a strategy to look into further.
Because on the Affordable Housing Committee, we've determined that it just, that site alone, the teen center site alone, and obviously Bank of America, this process informs that further, that the teen center site is just way too small for affordable housing project. So the only way you're going to see housing on that site is some type of expansion to another property. And then we kind of got into the ground lease stuff about, like, let's say the city wanted to do just a commercial development here. Is a ground lease how you would go about it? Or, I mean, like, how would that get financed? And what would the city's involvement in that process be? Like, how much would we need to invest beyond what we've already invested? Or would we?
Well, first of all, developer will always say they would prefer to buy it. So once you pass that hurdle, then, yeah, it really depends on the terms of the lease. If you're trying to get revenue from the lease versus just trying to cover your costs. So it's kind of the objective is, if the city is not wanting to sell the land, is it to bring in a revenue stream, or is it just the idea of selling public land is not appealing? So it really depends on the objectives and how much, how that works into the developer's pro forma on, how much they're paying in those lease payments.
Got it. That's it for me.
I want to piggyback on that. So, looking at a potential land lease, I think of that particular vehicle as a way to bring in a potential developer. Maybe they're not interested in paying 4.2 something for the site, but if there was some kind of option that we provided where it's a lease to own, and that then eventually we could relieve ourselves of owning this property and paying the interest. If we hold on to that property, in the end, over 20 years is $1.85 million. So is that, so I think we talked a little bit about that, but do you think that could be something that would be enticing, where you have your economic development director go out and look at particular small boutique commercial sites that we think would be appropriate for Brisbane, and they occur in other places, and talk to those development folks?
Yeah, it all comes down to the terms of the lease, and the lease can, on the one hand, if you're wanting to extract revenue, that's one side of the equation. On the other hand, if you're wanting to create an outcome where you're sweetening the deal with some kind of favorable lease terms, it can work that way too. So, for example, some mixed-use developments, and this can work for commercial as well, where the developer really wants to have a certain kind of tenant mix. They may offer those spaces at favorable rates that, there is a subsidy built in there, whether it's the rent or the lease or what have you. But they want that outcome, and that's what it takes to attract the tenant that they want. So there's,
Instead
it
of
can kind of go
putting,
infinitely.
a big chunk of money out front, purchasing the property, the city can have a pretty, inexpensive lease. And then it's like, okay, well, I don't have to worry about those costs right now. I can go out and get those tenants that I want, build the structure that I would like to see, and I know that I have time to recoup our money. All right, and we'll probably get off track here. So, but anybody have any other questions before we go into discussion? All right, so thank you, Kevin. All right, so Frank, thoughts?
I originally said that I would respectfully decline to go first because I'm the new member of the council here, and I did not vote to buy the bank building, so I feel that maybe you guys would have stronger opinions. But I'll go first here. I got a lot to say, I think. Yeah. So this project has really inspired me. So I've been out on a personal tour. This is on-foot primary research in person. I visited Kiku Crossing in San Mateo. This lends itself to something that Councilmember Davis just said. That is an affordable housing development, 111 units on 1.16 acres, a smaller plot of land than we have here at the bank building. That does not include parking. They had an adjacent property that they built a bridge to, bringing the grand total to 2.41 acres, and they put the parking across the street. Take a bridge to it. So that exists. I went over to Veterans Village, which was in our packet here. I already bent Kevin's ear on this. Veterans Village is one of my favorite. It's right over by Trader Joe's in Colma. That's on 2.2 acres, and it has 66 very spacious units, a dog park and a garden, plenty of surface parking. it's possible to do something like that. And then I went over to the massive Sierra Monte Del Rey, which is 22 acres and about 1,200 units. That's primarily for school teachers and local workers, and it's a very impressive facility. Throughout all of our community feedback collection, one of the big things I heard is that our location is too noisy. So I took a drive over to a development called Avalon Dog Patch, and as you're driving over to Oracle Park, it'll be on the right-hand side off the 280, and it literally is on the 280. The guardrail's here, then it's Avalon Dog Patch. It's so remarkably engineered that they use the interior corridors of the building as isolation to the freeway and the cars going 80 miles an hour. Once you're inside the units there, you cannot hear anything. It's pretty impressive. And then on a whim, I grabbed Councilmember Davis and I said, let's take a field trip down to Altitude Apartments, which are the brand new apartments at the Grand Avenue exit here, right off of the 101. And she and I toured Altitude. They do have some affordable units in there. It's mostly market rate. And I use a decibel meter to measure the amount of noise that was in the bedrooms, in the units that are on the side of the freeway. And they were only 5 decibels higher than my bedroom here on Mendocino Street. Now, if you open a window or a door to the freeway, they go over 50 decibels, which is kind of crazy. But I measured the mayor's voice tonight on his microphone, and the highest he hit was 60.6 decibels. So that he was louder than the traffic was tonight. So I think it's in my opinion now.
You should see me when I get mad. Then
Oh, we've
it really
seen it.
goes,
We've seen
boy,
it.
It's
yeah.
going up, actually. But my point being is that modern construction is very different these days, and they can do different things with insulation and air, and it just has been very impressive learning about what they're doing in these different locations. With that being said, I just wanted to say some primary research has been done. Thank you, Councilmember Davis, for going with me. So one other comment that I have is, I don't know who here reads the San Mateo County Journal, but yesterday, November 19th, 2025, a story was released. A very interesting story.
Not the one I wrote.
It wasn't the one you wrote.
Okay, thank you.
Anyhow, I'm looking at us, Brisbane, the 3rd smallest incorporated city in San Mateo County. Only Portola Valley and Colma are smaller than we are. And I'm just wondering, as we're going through this process, and this is a big process for us, why we're not tapping into the county. And then all of a sudden, the story appeared. So the Board of Supervisors, this story is from yesterday, you guys can look it up. The Board of Supervisors approved $4.4 million to purchase a property at 493 Eastmore Avenue in Daly City to facilitate a new affordable housing development. The project will bring 72 new units online, with more than half specifically designated for vulnerable populations. All 71 income-restricted units are for households earning between 20 to 50% of the AMI, that's area median income. The county's land purchase secures the site and makes the project more competitive for crucial tax funding and financing, with construction slated to begin as early as June of 2026. And I think one of the most important points is something we've been talking about tonight, at least I haven't, but the other council members have, is the county's purchase structure and ground lease ensures the site will remain 100% affordable for the next 99 years. This is creative thinking, and it's very exciting stuff. That story came out yesterday, is so timely for what we're talking about here tonight. With that being said, I think we've got some really interesting options on the table, and I'm interested to hear what the other council members have to say.
All right, thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Mackin.
First, I want to thank all the members of the public that went to all these pop-ups, made the comments, put the stickies on the easels, illustrations, and it was fascinating reading them. And we heard some of it tonight. We heard about the history, sea level rise, some of the problems there. We heard about, it used to be a shoreline, the community's direction for wanting parkland there. We see the community park, but Brisbane loves parks. We like parks. Also heard about those view corridors. That's over and over in here. We've blocked our view corridors both directions, east and west. I just want to go, I don't want to cut down trees, but I'd like to get rid of some buildings and open up those view corridors because it's one of our biggest assets. Why did we ever block everything? Then looking through the comments again, we should consider housing. No housing. What are we going to do with storefronts when so many are empty? This is the entry to Brisbane. It should be something special. Retail won't work. They're already, empty storefronts, a lot of that. Buy the shopping center. Make it a beautiful project. What happens to the Christmas tree lot? I can go through all of this, and I pretty much agree with everybody on all these comments. There's not much I disagreed with. And we're talking about one little tiny piece of land. You can't fix it all on that one little property.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll go back to the staff report. John Swickey, you're on now. July 18, 2024, Council directed staff to move forward with community engagement on 7 Old County Road. Allow for it to be developed on a standalone basis. Okay. The council further noted consideration should also be given to establishing a future vision for potential redevelopment of the adjacent shopping center to promote long-term compatibility between the adjacent properties. How can we ignore everything else next to that little piece of land? Why would we do that is what I ask. When I read all these comments, obviously people have high expectations and great ideas. I agree with them. So why are we focusing on one piece of land? Then I read the staff report, again from 2024. And here's a draft of the scope of work. The subject property, meaning Bank of America, is zoned neighborhood commercial, is located within the 25-acre Parkside at Brisbane Village precise plan. Gee, I guess we all forgot. And it says the Parkside plan envisioned the subject property being redeveloped with 2 adjacent properties, the Brisbane Village Shopping Center and 125 Valley Drive, together the commercial vision area, as a connected retail center and park plaza. So recently at a council meeting, I asked, please, before we go careening down the road on this one little property, could we form an ad hoc committee and look into the possibilities for the area? Because all we do is we get developers come here and they say, this is what I want to do right here. And we are at an apex because we have so many things going on with properties being bought and sold right now. This may be the opportunity of the history of Brisbane, and if we don't think bigger, we miss the boat. That's my opinion. And obviously, a lot of people have big ideals too. So do I. I'm cheering them on. So I would like to see this process not go further down the road, but let's explore what the possibility is for that whole area. Let's let the ad hoc committee do some work on this in conjunction with this consultant who has brought us a wealth of information, and let's check some more things out. Do our due diligence. Don't we deserve that? Don't we have higher aspirations for this? We want parks, we want those view corridors. Over and over, people in here said, I'd like a nice place, a restaurant or a grocery store. Maybe we can have all of that. Obviously, people are not happy with what we've got. The entrance to town, it's important. It's the entrance to our town. And many good considerations. Housing, yes, housing. There's probably room for housing there. It doesn't all have to be on one little lot at Bank of America. Paul, you brought up some great ideas with the former 23 Club. I pretty much agree with you there. We own the teen center lot too. We've got some options for housing. We don't have to put it all in one spot. Bank of America is prime retail. It's the face of Brisbane. It should be a magnet for those 20,000 cars driving down the road to stop and spend their money in Brisbane. and our residents to say, hey, meet me in Brisbane. I live there. We've got a great place to go. Come after work. That we're really proud of what we did. We can do this. We don't have all the money in the world. You say, well, where are we going to get the money? It's all about how you approach it, how you negotiate it, how you work with developers, how you work with property owners. We can say Parkside 1 has sat there for years. Well, there's a lot of things changing, and with change comes opportunity. And if we keep an open mind, what do we lose by trying? I really want to see us explore more for the whole area. I think we deserve that. So I hope I get some support on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mackin. Councilmember Davis.
I think it's important to give a little bit of background on how we got here, just for the public. So we realized that this property was going to be available for sale. We thought this was a very strategic parcel. So some council members were in favor of using affordable housing funds to buy the property. Other council members were concerned because there was no public outreach process. And what if we bought this parcel with affordable housing money and then we went to the community and the community said, absolutely no, it doesn't make sense to have housing there. And that was a fair point. So we decided, okay, we'll buy it with general fund money. We'll control all 4 corners of the entrance to town. And if we decide to put affordable housing site there, we'll refund ourselves. And Councilmember Mayor Lentz and I, we met with Mid-Penn at the time. We talked about the feasibility of building an affordable housing project there. And we determined that it would make sense and that the scale wouldn't be too out of control. And that was obviously in a different time, in 2021, 2022. So we did do due diligence. And so that was some of the background. And then we got into litigation with High Speed Rail. And High Speed Rail wanted to totally alter the entrance to town. And so were that to happen, Old County Road might have not even been there. And so what was our problem? If we had Bank of America site, that could expand all the way to the Christmas tree lot. And so we thought, hey, well, we need to figure out if Old County Road is going to be here or not, because we could completely expand the footprint of this project. And that's really important to know before we do this. And so that's why we waited some more. And that litigation took a lot of time. So we resolved that. We had a settlement. Old County Road is staying. And when we realized that that was the case, immediately we engaged with Good City and we started this process. So while it might be frustrating that we purchased the property in 2022 and here we are in 2025, now moving into 2026 and nothing has happened, there's a lot of reasons for that. And we were wanting to make the best decision for Brisbane. So, important background. For me, I always envisioned housing on this site. I know that might be a controversial thing to say. I've really evolved in my time being on the city council. I think when I first got elected, I was really hesitant about housing, and we were in the Baylands EIR, and there was a lot of concerns around housing and development. And as I've grown, the need for affordable housing is something that I grappled with every single day. And I just saw all my friends struggling to stay in the Bay Area, me staying up really late at night thinking that I was just never going to be able to afford to buy a house in the town that I've grown up in. And just feeling like I was going to be priced out. I was going to have to leave my home because I just simply could not afford to stay here. And so for me, the timeline is so critical. It's so important. And to be on my 10th year on the city council and basically have not tapped into any of the money in the Affordable Housing Fund is, to me, such a travesty and something that haunts me. And we've looked at a lot of sites. We had a property off McLean. Oh no. that's not going to work because it's on the side of the mountain and it's really difficult to develop. And so we sold it. And then we have the teen center and we looked at building something there, and no, that's not going to work because it's way too small. We did try to buy 23 Club. We tried to buy that property. We tried to conjoin it with the teen center, and we could not come to an agreement with the sellers. And I would have loved to have something right in the heart of our town, but I know what I would have heard, and it would have been, oh, 5 stories right there in the middle of town, not next to my house. Everything around it is 2 stories, maybe 3. 5 stories would be a monstrosity. And that just does not fit the character of Brisbane. And I feel like this is what I hear every time we're talking about a site, that there's always a reason why it doesn't work for housing. And yeah, you know, there'll be housing out of the Baylands. Some of it will be affordable. That's fantastic. But we are charged with a responsibility as a city council with $4 million in affordable housing money, and we really need to figure out how we're going to spend it. I will be so disappointed if I leave this city council at some point and we still have that money sitting there. I will feel like a failure. And so now in my 10th year, I'm ramping up more and more. And, you know, we need affordable housing for everyone. We don't need it just for teachers. We don't need it just for firefighters or seniors. We need it for everyone. We need it for young families who are having 2-3 kids in a 1-bedroom apartment. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment with a kid right now. So it's really, really critical. And so when I saw this site, I was like, oh, you know what? It's going to be perfect because it's right by the bus. Wow, it's our closest access to something near transit. That's great for an affordable housing site where people might not have a car. Excellent. It's the closest thing to Caltrain. I thought, you know, it's not going to be next to someone's house. They're not going to have to look at it every single day and complain that it's a monstrosity because affordable housing does need to be dense usually to work. It's flat, so we don't have to worry about site constraints in that manner. The building that's there is already a temporary building. It's a good size. We could do mixed use. So for me, I always thought that it would make sense for affordable housing if the community was bold enough to agree. And so I'm so proud to look at the responses and see that the community really does support some level of affordable housing here with mixed use. Unfortunately, I'm worried that it may be just out of reach with what the community expects for this site and what realistically needs to be built. I would love to do a mixed use development of, 2 stories of housing and bottom level retail. It seems like those numbers don't really pan out. So that frustrates me. And I don't really know any other site like in town where it does make sense. So just thinking about starting this process over and over and over again of trying to find a site and not building anything is kind of demoralizing. So I know that, Paul, you mentioned the housing coming in off Bayshore. That's obviously going to have to come to council. The council's going to have to decide whether the council wants to even zone that. It's a possibility. What's suggested there is market rate. It's condos for sale. It's not going to move the needle for people who need affordable housing. So I feel real responsibility, and I just don't see where else it's going to go. I know people thought about a community center and how great that would be. Would love a community center. The cool thing is we already have one. We already have a building. We just need to throw some money into that. I think that's centrally located. Kids can walk to it and their parents would probably feel good about that. I don't know that I would send my son to go walk out to Bank of America site when he's of age. I don't think right off Bayshore is the place for that. So I hear the community's interest in more gathering spaces, and I I wholeheartedly agree. I just don't think that that's the site. Hey, I'd love to look at incorporating the village. I'd love to just like live in a world where we could dream big and those things happen. I'd love to snap my fingers and put a Trader Joe's there. But I also think like, we have to be realistic. And my fear is that we are going to try to engage with two property owners that have historically been resistant to us. We get some kind of plan together. The community is on board. They love it, like Parkside. They want it to happen. And it becomes a red herring. We're just sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for something to happen. And at what point do you have to say, we are now actively contributing to the problem that we bought this property to try to avoid. We bought Bank of America because we were afraid what would come in there. We were afraid it would be blight, and we wanted something magnificent. And at what point do you say, okay, well, it's been a certain amount of time. These people aren't cooperative. We don't have any developers at the table. When do you say it makes sense for us to just sell it off then, or build something, do something? I don't want to see this city sit on taxpayer money and just contribute to a problem. I love the idea of like a vibrant little shopping area. But in the entire time I've lived in this town, which is 34 years, I've seen spaces vacant all the time. It's a chronic problem. And I think that speaks to bigger dynamics at play. To just assert that like we have businesses that people don't like, I think is insulting to the businesses that we have. And I don't know that adding a ton more retail space is that responsible when we have so many vacant businesses and the businesses we have struggle and we're going to create more competition for them. I don't want to be a pessimist, but I see this situation maybe a little bit differently. And I would hate for us to create this incredible retail space and just have it sit. And one San Bruno has sat. When did that get built? Does anyone know when one San Bruno got built?
I am taking a guess here. Others may know better. 2011?
Yeah, I was
Perhaps.
on the planning commission when we approved it, so
Yeah.
probably around that time span.
So almost 15 years. Beautiful brand new building. That's where someone would want to be, right in the heart of town, right across from the park. I couldn't envision a better spot. But it just took till now to get a daycare to come in, and we had to finagle some things to make it work for the daycare. So I'd love to see us, the council's already given authority to a subcommittee to look at these things. And I think we should dot all our I's and cross all our T's and try to build the best thing for Brisbane. But I just don't want us to contribute to the problem of blight. And I don't know how much it makes sense for us to build commercial property. To me, like, that's not a good use of taxpayer money to put all this money to help build private enterprise. I'd rather take $4 million, like sell it off, take $4 million and put it into a fantastic community center. Affordable housing really is a public good. And without that as being part of the equation, I don't think it's a responsible choice to make. I think that it could be, we could build it and nobody rents it. And I just don't think it's the highest and best use for public funds to be building private stores. So, and I don't foresee a land lease. Like, we're going to be sitting there forever trying to get money back on a ground lease. We haven't gotten money back on a ground lease for Bridge. We never will. I just don't think it's a responsible financial choice. So I say, you want to look at it? Fine. We need to come up with parameters and how long we're going to sit on this. I think we bring the teen center in as part of the equation. And if we don't want to put housing there, then I think we need to sell it and focus on something else. That's it for me.
Well, thank you for the passionate comments. First of all, I'm just going to say thank you to the public for providing the feedback. Yeah, this process was important. It was something that we had to do. Right? You know, the city council, we're not just, you know, kings up here. We're public servants. We did purchase the land, and we did it through a public, you know, process. I would have liked to seen the property purchased with the affordable housing funds, because we would have had a 10-year window to figure it out. And if affordable housing didn't work, okay, that's fine. And then we just purchased the property back, like we did with the old with the new library or the McLean property. But we have a loan here, and so there's a responsibility to be prudent with the public's you know, investment. And so the options that have been provided, I think they're great. I agree with you, Colleen, that, yeah, and Madison, you know, having some kind of affordable housing component sounds great. Having some mixed use sounds great. If it was a commercial, you know, boutique type of situation, that'd be great too. Bottom line is that we got a 1.27 acre site, and it's just really limited. And so we need to explore, and I'm glad that the council did approve the ad hoc committee to look at all the properties that are across the street from the park, evaluate all of them. And, you know, if property owners don't want to do something with the city, well, okay, then so be it. But we're going to be stuck kind of going around in circles, I feel, if we just limit ourselves to the 1.27. You know, we could tell good cities, hey, okay, go out and, you know, provide, you know, a final option for us. But we kind of know what it's going to be, whatever we choose. I would prefer that, you know, with the remaining, what is it, $82,000 that remains, that we allow the ad hoc committee to work with good cities to evaluate a greater scope. By having more space, you could accommodate affordable housing. Right? You know, you look at what people said in this document, the space is not big enough. And so in order for it to pencil out, you have to have more units. And if we're gonna have more units, well, then we need a bigger footprint. People want to have, you know, some cool retail options for us. Well, if we're gonna be able to do that, they have to have a place to park. You can't fit it all in this one spot. It just keeps coming back to the size. But it also keeps coming back that we have this loan, and there's a responsibility there to act. And so what I'm hoping, if we can get the majority of the council to give direction, that let the ad hoc committee work with good cities and work with staff to figure out a more comprehensive strategy, a more comprehensive game plan that incorporates all the things that we just talked about, including the affordable housing that you're passionate about, Madison. So that's what I'm hoping the council can give direction to, or have questions of, you know, perhaps keeping things in a, you know, particular, you know, lane, if that feels more appropriate.
I said this the last time, and I'll say it again. I'm not in favor of spending any more money on this when we're looking at other parcels if we don't have a meeting with those property owners and they express an interest. I think, like, we need to have a viable product if they are not interested. So I think if we spend our $82,000 left on coming up with a plan that includes the village and maybe a Prologis site, and they have no real interest, then where's the money going to come from to come up with a plan for our property? We need to have a plan for our property, and maybe we could have a secondary plan that encompasses a larger site. But I would hate to see us spend $82,000 and come up with a plan, and these people have no interest, and then now we have to put in more money to come up with a plan just for our site. So I think that really is step one. And I think a big component of that is what I said earlier. If the village is going to sell, what price do they need to get for their property? Because Prologis' site, I mean, that's nice, but you need the village. You need the village first and foremost. Then if you could pull in the Prologis site, fantastic. But if the village is not interested, then the game over. That's the site that you need. So I think that getting an understanding of how much they would need, and I think we do have those numbers, and then taking that to your stakeholders and having them say what makes sense, a land cost for that parcel and our parcel, then you could see if we're close or we're really far apart. And that information, I think, is what would inform the next step.
You're absolutely right, Madison, about, you need a willing partner. And we don't know if we have a willing partner. But one of the things that was expressed tonight from Good Cities is that developers want assurances. They want some certainty. We don't have anything. But if we have a plan, it's well laid out what we would like to see happen and build in some flexibility, right? So that then that shopping center owner, maybe Prologis, looks at it and says, okay, we might be able to do something here because this is what you're willing to allow occur. Right now, we have zoning that for the, if you're talking about Prologis, it's for warehousing. They could have a freight forwarder in there if they want it. The village site is very restricted. Perhaps is one of the reasons why it looks the way that it is, because they're limited on what they can do based upon our zoning. If we came back with new zoning that we approve through the public process, through, with Good Cities, if that's the pleasure of the council, then now we have something. We have something that we can put out there into the marketplace. And if they're not interested, then they're not interested. But we know that our site has limitations, and it's very clear. It's on display tonight. And if we think that if we just focused on this property and we were going to build 50 to 100 units of affordable housing, or 5 stories with parking, is that really going to be viable for the public? And I don't think that it is. And so we need to explore and try something new that we currently are not doing right now. And so, what do you think, Frank? I'm just put it over to you.
It would be hard for me to disagree with anything that's been said. I also feel like without some sort of deadline, even if it isn't a concrete deadline, some kind of deadline here, we're going to remain in the same boat literally forever. And so I think what the subcommittee needs to do is they need to go behind closed doors, come up with some objectives and some goals that allows us to check some boxes. And it might not be a final plan. There's no way you're coming up with a final plan when we're talking about private property. It's impossible.
Yes.
But at some point, we've been presented with a few plans that will work on this footprint. This now, based upon this exploration, becomes Plan B, depending on what shakes out here. I'm very concerned that we're reliant on a private property owner to move forward with that parcel of land and the future front of town. So, with that being said, I think I'm on board with further exploration, but this cannot go on. Like we cannot just go on indefinitely having conversations and talks. So, But also at some point, if we go to Plan B, and Plan B options are nice, they're all nice. Everything that's been presented tonight is nice. But I think the expression is the tide raises all boats, or something along those lines. This gets built, and this is beautiful, and this meets our standards on the Bank of America building, then that value of that shopping center, all the adjacent properties, goes through the roof. And so I think at this point, do the exploration, have a cutoff date, time box it, and say, we're going to work on this till XYZ date, and then we move forward.
That's exactly what I was saying. It was said better. And I think, or you just zone it for mixed use. Like you just say, okay, immediately we can increase the value of that property and zone it for mixed use. And then that might make the property owner willing to sell. I think I'd love to see a town square and something amazing and beautiful and all the restaurants in the world that we want. But we need to have the plan that we know we can make work, will work, is on only our property. We have to, that's our responsibility, is the property that we have. And then if you want to have a more pie in the sky plan that brings in another property and is like the ultimate dream, amazing, fantastic. But we can't just do that and not plan for our site or say, hey, it's this or nothing. That might be what the council wants to do. It's this huge, big development, mixed use, commercial, affordable, fantastic. Or we want to say, if it's not that, then we don't want to build this site and we just want to sell it.
Right.
And then just do that.
All right. So,
and one more thing for maybe the subcommittee, this is just me, if I may. The reason I pulled that article and I talked about that article is I don't think we need to do this alone. I think that reaching out to the county and checking out to see if there's other additional resources that are out there, I think that's a smart approach for us to do at this point.
And pull in the teen center because that's a property that's defunct also.
I'm not laughing at you, I'm laughing with you.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
okay, so to be clear, we're giving direction for the ad hoc committee to work with good cities to come up with a broader scope and to then come back with the council particular options, not getting, having this plan A and having plan B be the site that we just done.
Can you accommodate that in the funds that are remaining? Now 2 plans?
Yeah, I can't say offhand if we can or not, but what I will say, I think there's a lot of great ideas, and I always try to think of a way, how can you integrate all those ideas into one direction? If you're thinking like a developer, developers often think in phases, right? They may acquire one property at one point, they may acquire another property at one point, and they try to integrate that vision over time. So there could be a situation, it sounds like the property owner there has done their thing for a while and hasn't been as engaged, right? So I do agree, really, 2 things can be true here with that property. The first is they need to see the upside value of future rezoning to be engaged, but you can't really sell them on that vision unless they're engaged, right?
Sure.
You could always think of it, okay, we have this smaller parcel right now. What can we do on that site? And how can we craft an RFP to say, we want to make sure this is designed in a way that could integrate into a future redevelopment of the shopping center? Obviously, it's going to be a little bit more constraining because you don't have as much wiggle room, but you can design it in a way, or at least better than if you don't take that into consideration, that this site might be redeveloped in the future. Concurrently, then you could also outreach to that property owner, start to engage in that discussion about what could be done with the site in the long term, and think about it from a market standpoint too. The truth is, right now, even if you had the best plan in place, you probably wouldn't get anything built on that shopping center just because it's a tough development market right now. So it actually is a decent time to be thinking about what your long-term vision is. But I know, like all cities, there's urgency around affordable housing, and you do have this site here. So is there a way that you could balance those two, have an affordable housing site, but make sure the city's vision is that affordable housing can be integrated someday into a larger site redevelopment?
Mm-hmm.
Just something to think about, or the ad hoc committee to think about.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, there are three things that I think would be potentially useful at this time. The first is just a comment related to, if probably not the best space to be negotiating any contracts, so we can take that offline. So the second is related to what the property owners are doing. As the council knows, we've managed to start some engagement with Brisbane Village. We are developing a relationship with Prologis. If the council desires, I would be happy to speak with them with more specificity associated with what the council's been discussing. I think that can give us a flavor, so I'd like that authorization. And the third, I'd like some real specificity associated with the $80,000, so we know walking out of here if there's going to be a component of that or something else, or we could take that offline tonight and bring something back in consultation with Good City.
To me, that's intimately tied to the response that you get. We have disagreement on that, but for me personally, I think that you can only earmark how you're going to spend the remaining funds once you have that very critical conversation about a property that's part of the mix. I don't know what the harm is in doing that and then coming back and having that conversation.
Yeah.
I suspect, through the chair, I suspect one of the two property owners is actively reviewing our agendas and watching our meetings and is somewhat aware of the conversations that are already occurring. So I don't think anything's going to be a complete surprise. But if you're comfortable with the three things I just stated, I think we can, that would be, I think, great direction, and we can move forward.
Okay, so, hold on.
As a comment to our city manager's suggestion, I think that it would be prudent to have the ad hoc committee meet with the city manager before we start doing any outreach to develop a more coherent plan rather than just dipping the toe in the water. I don't think we want to put ourselves out there unless we have the messaging very clear in our own minds. So I think we need some meetings with you to go over that, and probably community development as well.
I would support that.
And economic development as well. And I just wanted to also express appreciation, both of my colleagues, all of my colleagues. Madison, in terms of site usage, you mentioned when high-speed rail going to the Baylands and how the entrance to Brisbane was going to be changed. And we all did a lot of brainstorming about what that would look like. And I'd like you to maybe do some brainstorming about what if that entrance to town did change, because there's a lot of property there. And in terms of approaching a vision for the shopping center and the entire area, plus the Bank of America, I concur with you. Housing has to be part of it. It's a matter of where and how you utilize all of that land to your best purposes. And affordable housing, senior housing, first-time home buyers. Yes, we have RENA allocations. We need to deal with that. And I think we can make it work, but we've never explored it from this standpoint. And in terms of county funds and their buying property, I haven't seen them knocking on Brisbane's door, so I'm not going to hold my breath, because they like bigger cities with very large developments, but I'm not going to cross that off the list either. I think it's a matter of we need to be pragmatic and do one step at a time, and go step one, see what happens with that, and keep the council advised.
I would
And
love
that's
that.
the best approach.
I would love
because
that.
I concur with everything you said. I don't disagree. I think you don't have the benefit of some of the conversations we've had and what we might have in mind. And it might change your opinion a little bit, because it actually incorporates a lot of things that you desire, and yours as well. But we've not had the benefit of talking about that.
I would absolutely love that. I just don't want us to get caught in a trap where we're waiting for something to happen that isn't possible.
Neither do we. Neither do we. Because it's the same frustration of having 25 years of a shopping area that's like, and when an area thrives, all the businesses benefit. So that's part of the goal too. We've had some longtime Brisbane businesses. I'd like to see them do better. And I think bringing more traffic is going to make them do better. So that's also part of the objective here.
So, Frank,
So can I just ask, I think we're all kind of on the same page here. What can we say to the community in terms of expectations, next steps? We're out of 2025. 25 is run out at this point. Next week is
Thank you.
Thanksgiving.
Yes.
What are we looking at here in terms of like, what do you guys think you're going to need? What are we bringing back? How are we going to communicate this? I'm just trying to put some just really rough guardrails around what we're looking at.
you know, I would hope that if we had, say, 2 to 3 months to work with staff in good cities, we have $82,000 in the budget. We're going to use it prudently. I mean, maybe we don't use all of it, but we need to use some of it, right? They're not going to work for free. And so,
What?
and let us come back with something, but give us a little bit of time. And I think, as Councilmember Mackin has said, I think we can come with a deliverable that is appealing. But you know, again, if the property owners don't want to do it, at least we gave it our best shot. But we do have the authority of zoning.
Yes.
And we can move forward with zoning, and maybe a current property owner isn't interested, but at least we've laid out the foundation for what we want.
Yes.
Right? Just keep getting back to what Councilmember Mackin says. Let's put our hands on the wheel, and then we give it our best shot. So
That's within our domain of control. Is it fair, though, to ask the committee to come back in January with a status update of the nature of the conversations that you have had, at least with those parties? Do you think that you would have had those by the end of January, at least just that status update?
I can't say, because we're going, December is a hard time to get people to meet. Optimistically, I'd love to, but realistically, I don't know. I mean, the council has a busy schedule in December, and I don't know what to say.
I just don't know that
Optimistically, I would love to.
I just don't know that the next step is 2 to 3 months and you're coming with a product. Like, to me, it's like
no.
a report
I mean,
out.
I think
It's a report out.
out.
Yes.
Okay. That's the timeline for that is 2 to 3 months?
You know, we'll see how we go. I mean, I
Okay.
think
Sooner.
Yeah,
We don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
We haven't started, so there's no way to tell.
No, I just, for the pub, because that's the question that Frank asked, and that's, you know, I just want to clarify it so we're all on the same page of what
Yeah.
we think is we can accomplish in 2 to 3 months. Is it just like kind of a status update of maybe some of the work you've been doing and not necessarily like a deliverable?
Through the chair, what I would suggest is that John and Julia and I spend some time with Good City in the short term here and give this a little more flesh on the bones. So and then I can come to the subcommittee and present that information so you understand what we're looking at. And there's also an interest in a direct engagement as well. So we'll find a way to do that in the very, very short term. So at least we understand if they're available, if the scope works, what that would look like. And that might be something that we can report out on very quickly, at least as an information item. But let me work with both groups, and then I think we can go from there.
All right. I think we've given direction.
Do we need to hear from our consultants on availability, or are you able to work with us in the near future?
Yes, I think what the city manager said is perfect. We could sit down with John, Julia, and Jeremy and work on to see if there's any refinements to the scope we're needing with kind of the next 2-3 month timeline.
Okay.
All right. Fantastic. All right. So I think we're good. All right. I see a nod of the head. So let's move on to our next item. Thank you, Kevin and Aaron.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, very short presentation on my behalf because I believe that the staff report written by our assistant city manager speaks for itself. At the last council meeting, the mayor expressed an interest in reestablishing the sister city relationship with Brisbane, Australia. He cited a number of reasons to do so, including a recent visit from Peter Johnstone and also opportunities in the future to perhaps work on things like the Olympics. What we've presented with you tonight is a letter that we'd like to send to the Lord Mayor of Brisbane, indicating our interest in renewing that relationship. Thank you.
All right. So any council questions for staff? Any issues with the letter itself? Okay. So I'll just open, oh,
I'm sorry, I have a question.
okay.
Staff report indicates membership costs, which are really nominal. But then it mentions costs exclude potential costs of exchange visits between the two cities. Could we please elaborate on that? What are we talking about?
Absolutely. Typically, with the sister cities organization, when you formalize a partnership with another sister city, there is typically cultural visits that take place between the two cities. So, for instance, in my former city, we had a sister city that we would send. We sent a delegation to the other country. They stayed and they learned sort of how their government works, sort of about their economic development, things of that nature. And then in return, they had sent a contingent over to our city to learn about how we do business. And so it's sort of a cultural exchange, but it's also, you learn from the other city as well. So there are costs associated with that, such that, maybe you would host another city and, pay for transportation or pay for lodging. You'd invest staff time in giving them a tour of the city. Those sorts of costs are not included in that $192 membership
and then
fee.
a second question, not throwing any water on a very benevolent idea, but is looking at 2026 and what we have on our plate with developments and lots of meetings, does staff have time to deal with this?
I think the short answer is yes. It would depend on the expansiveness of the relationship, as both parties may indicate interest in. But I don't see a significant amount of staff time associated with the day-to-day of having a sister city program.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, let's open up to the public. So Michelle, you want to come on up? Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. Oh, sorry. All right, but Linda, you want to come on up there?
Since you're asking.
Because I'm sure you remember when Clem came to visit.
Indeed, I do, because I was the unofficial host.
You're probably running around and
making
a little
the
onesie.
hors d'oeuvres for the people who came to our house here in town, with Clem, and it was fantastic, and it was really wonderful, actually, the choice, and although my dad didn't get to go, because he just had other things going on, but other people have gone to Brisbane, Australia, in terms of the sister cities early on that we had. And I think it's a great idea because we are a sister city. I don't think it's any other Brisbane in the world.
Yeah.
And we always have to identify ourselves as Brisbane, California, because otherwise they think we're from Australia.
Yes.
So I think it's a wonderful idea to reinstitute it. We might not have as much back and forth as we used to have, but on the other hand, sometimes you can get flights. And airlines might be willing to, do free flights for publicity. You never know.
You never know.
So let's do it.
All right, thank you, Linda. Okay, so any council discussion on this, or should
Just
we
had a
move
quick
forward?
comment.
Okay.
I would just encourage, if you're interested in hearing more about our relationship with Australia, to look at the latest blast from the past in the Luminary. Is an article about how there's actually so much in the Brisbane Bee about our relationship with Australia, lots of articles. But the one in the Luminary recently was about how a bunch of students came. So I think there was like lots of visits, and students would come here and they would stay in the area, and they came during Thanksgiving. And the hotel that they were staying at wasn't going to provide a Thanksgiving dinner. And they were super disappointed because they had not experienced Thanksgiving before. And so Anya and Ray heard about this and other council members. And so they had a big banquet at the Brisbane Inn. And Brisbane showed up, a bunch of residents, Lions Club members, and cooked a whole Thanksgiving feast for maybe it was a dozen or 24 visitors from Australia. And the city presented gifts, and they talked about what does Thanksgiving mean and what are some of the traditional foods. And so it was a real beloved relationship, not just amongst council to council, but really amongst the community, and hosting these people and you know, being proud of our culture and our small town. And so it's just a well-placed little snippet from history that I encourage everyone to read.
There you go.
If they want to learn more.
All right. So I guess
One thing, I'm just putting on my old school marketing hat here. I've worked with Fortune 500 companies most of my career. And at one point in time, I was with Allstate Insurance, and we were one of the key sponsors of the Olympics, and that was a massive public relations opportunity. The 2023 Olympics are being held in Brisbane, Australia. There is probably some sort of PR and promotion marketing that we can do here, along with events and activities. So it's a big deal.
absolutely.
And the mayor has promised to get the torch here. So.
I am working on it. I'm working on it. But it might not be me. It might be Colleen going over there. All righty.
I'm not taking that torch, Cliff. It's your job.
You're the fastest runner, Cliff. Faster than
It is not
Oh,
about
yeah, you got to
speed,
run.
you know?
Yeah.
job you're built for.
All righty. So I guess we're good with the letter. Okay, everyone's nodding. So moving on to staff reports, city managers report, updates, city updates, and upcoming activities.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. In lieu of speaking to events, which there are not many in the next couple weeks, I wanted to speak a little bit about the Halloween closure and some of the things that we've been learning from our due diligence and post-mortem, if you will. We all found, from a staff perspective, it was a very successful event, although staff resources were stretched quite a bit. So in speaking with the volunteers, Jessica Loft and others, one of the things we may consider for next year is reducing the scope a little bit, so it's a little bit more manageable from a staff perspective. We had a lot more staff available than we initially anticipated, just to make sure everything was okay. And we had a night that went very well, and that might not be the case in future events. Few other learnings, but that was the most important one, and also the commitment from the CMO, from the county city manager's office, that we want to continue this event. So it was very successful. People were very excited, and that's our goal. So thank you.
Nice.
All right. And that is it? That is it. Okay, mayor council matters, city council meeting schedule and recruitment update. So we got this thing here. All right.
Mayor and council,
Okay, yeah.
we provided a recruitment update in front of you. And we basically have 2 new late applications that want to be considered for the planning commission, and I want a direction from council regarding those 2 applications. We have Darius Wozniak and Renee Comerford. And the consideration would be to interview these 2 applicants as part of the planning commission applicant pool.
All right, so any council feedback on the late applicant submissions?
I'm supportive of the interviews.
I am as well.
Same.
There you go.
Secondly, we also have a new applicant or seeking reappointment for Wendy Frisk for the community garden steward. And I wanted to know if council was open to, did you want me to further pursue recruitment for a second steward or other applicants? Or would you be willing to just interview one applicant for this position?
I would say she's the current steward.
Okay.
So I don't know that we need to go find someone to possibly replace her.
Yeah, because we haven't sent out the letter as directed, so we could just refrain from doing.
Okay. And Ingrid, I do have a question for you. So, and I don't know, maybe I was tired at our last meeting, but with the idea committee, so it's a 2-year term, but you can reapply for another 2 years without having to interview.
Yes.
And so we
That's part of their
it's
bylaws,
clear.
correct?
Okay, great. So do we have any idea applicants are in that situation?
Yes, we have, in your list there, it says second term renewal / reappointment. That's for Quita Highsmith and Carol Zoltowski.
Okay, great. So we won't be interviewing them.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification.
And then if you flip over to the next side, we have the new council meeting schedule. Just wanted to remind folks that December 1st and 2nd would be the special meeting for interviews. December 4th, we'll have a special meeting for the reorg discussion at 6, regular session at 6:30, and a potential closed session at 7:30. Or immediately
Can you say that one more time?
Sure. And then do you want? Do you have this? Okay.
Oh,
in the back.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's on the back of this.
So
Got
that
it.
6 o'clock special meeting for reorg discussion, regular session at 6:30, and then immediately following will be a potential closed session for the 4th. Okay, and then December 9th, that special meeting for best practices has been canceled. December 11th, closed session. We'll have that closed session per Abby's email for the public employment item for city attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll have the regular special meeting for the reorganization at 6:30. And then December 18th, that meeting is canceled as discussed earlier.
Great.
And you'll be sending out reminders on all of this.
All the
Yeah.
calendar Outlook invitations have been sent.
Okay, great. Okay. Thank you, Ingrid. So moving on to countywide assignments and subcommittee reports. Anyone want to report out? Colin?
I will report out that I had a CCAG meeting, and I will not ply you with the details because it was a lot of administrative items on the agenda. And when it gets interesting, I will come back to you with more substantive information. How's that?
That works for us. Thank you. Brian?
Can I talk about upcoming subcommittee meetings? We're not there yet?
No, we're not. We're
Okay.
at this reports.
Sorry.
Hang on. Okay. So, but now we are at upcoming. And you may tell us, right?
I
Great.
knew that was enough.
Great. My name is appearing too frequently under upcoming subcommittee
Me
meetings.
too.
Yes. And so under Sea Level Rise Subcommittee, I would like my name removed and the proper name put in the
Come
mayor's.
on, Frank.
Thank you.
Okay. Well. Written, yeah.
The water's rising.
Written communications. Ingrid?
Council has received communications from Carolyn Moore regarding Park at Sierra Point, CCAG Chair regarding the draft MTC Plan Bay Area 2050, available for comment. Roland LeBrun regarding undergrounding Caltrine at Bayshore. Susan Kirsch, objections to Plan Bay Area 2050 and the DEIR, call to action. And that's it.
All right, great. Thank you. All right, oral communications number 2. Anybody out there? Oh, well, I'll
Yeah.
give you guys the first crack, and then if no one wants to do oral communications number 2, then I'll give it to the folks at home. So, Paul?
I know it's getting late. I'll try to keep it short. It wasn't on the agenda because it wasn't mentioned up until it was mentioned about rezoning the Village Shopping Center. And it seems like wanting to build housing on those lots adjacent, that was never mentioned. I know back when the Teachers Association owned that middle lot there next to the Village Shopping Center, there was thoughts that we could do something there. But it was mentioned that the prices would go right through the roof if it was rezoned, and that shopping center would have like a boon of opportunity. So why not give those two property owners the opportunity to buy the Bank of America, and we don't even deal with development, and we would be setting the rules down as far as what would be developed anyway. So, you know, you let them know we're going to rezone it, and you have an opportunity to buy the B of A property. That could be a great opportunity for us to close the door on that chapter.
All
Thank
right. Thank you, Paul. Okay, so, anybody else? All right, so out in, no one's online who wants to speak. Okay, well, hello. So, we are adjourned. Thank you very much for attending tonight's council meeting.